Welcome to Not Another Greek History Podcast, the podcast that aims to be exactly what it says. I'm your host, Onouphrios Dovlepis, and together we'll discover the not so frequently told stories of Greece's history that will change the way you view things forever. I'm actually sitting at this very central cafe in Egypt, which is very busy, it's very lively, there's a lot of people, very noisy, a lot of honking, obviously, because people in Egypt love honking. And let's see what we can do with this. It's a war anyway that we're going to be talking about. So let's go to Octavian. He used propaganda to portray Antony as a traitor who had abandoned Rome for Cleopatra. And he portrayed Cleopatra as manipulative. She must have been, of course, and had to be. He portrayed her as a foreign queen. Well, she was. Who had seduced Antony. She had. And who threatened Rome's stability. Well, I wish she really had, because I don't think she actually did. So in 32 BC, Octavian declared war on Cleopatra, not on Antony, because that would be a civil war. The decisive conflict occurred in 31 BC in Greece at a place called Actium, or Actium in Latin, Actium in Greek. You can look for Actium on the map to see its location. It's in western Greece. Cleopatra and Antony's fleet faced Octavian's forces led by Agrippa. Towards the end of the battle, Cleopatra retreated, leading to a disastrous defeat for Antony, who soon followed her. Their plan was to gather their army in Macedonia, the origin place of Cleopatra, of course, in northern Greece, but the army surrendered to Octavian. What an irony that would have been for Cleopatra to have this decisive battle in the land of her ancestors. But it never happened. Marcus and Cleopatra fled to Alexandria, where they attempted to regroup in a final attempt to defend their power. Octavian pursued them, arriving in Alexandria the following year. But by that time, Antony's forces had largely disbanded or defected to Octavian. Believing Cleopatra had died, Antony fell on his sword. Shukran. That was my coffee which just arrived. So in the movie, Antony would say to Cleopatra, "Without you, there is no Rome, there is no world." He was taken to Cleopatra and died in her arms. Oh my god, is this Romeo and Juliet or what? Octavian invades Alexandria itself and plans to parade Cleopatra as a trophy in Rome. He has a last conversation with the Greek queen inside her unfinished tomb. In the movie, there's this really smart dialogue. As I told you, the movie is filled with amazing dialogues. Octavian, after all this and all that has happened, I suppose you're still beautiful in a way. Cleopatra, you flatter me. Octavian, my interest is impersonal. Should you have any intention, Cleopatra intervenes, and she says, now you flatter yourself that I would be interested in you. That's really funny. As Weigel writes, she had played her wonderful game for the amalgamation of Egypt and Rome into one vast kingdom, ruled by her descendants and those of the great Julius Caesar, and she had lost. The end of Cleopatra's life was as dramatic as her reign, as it should be. Cleopatra is unwilling to be publicly humiliated in Rome, like her sister had been by Cleopatra's lover, Caesar. That's why in 30 BC, the queen decides to take her own life. It was her last act to stay in control and deprive Antony of the joy of capturing her. According to legend, she used an asp, an Egyptian cobra, although some historians suggest poison. We'll definitely go with the cobra because it's way more dramatic. And as she's dying, she would have definitely said, as Shakespeare wrote, "Give me my robe, put on my crown, now boast thee death, in thy possession lies a lass unparalleled." And unparalleled she was indeed. Oddly enough, I actually remember watching this on TV, which is very surprising that I watched the entire movie as a kid, because the one that they show on TV and the one that was actually shown in the cinemas was 3 hours long. In Greece, by the way, they would sometimes show Cleopatra during Easter week to fill their programs, along with The Sound of Music and Dr. Zhivago. movies that were completely irrelevant with Easter but were simply long enough. The queen, by the way, wasn't alone in her death. Her loyal servants Charmion and Iras helped her. Both servants died with the queen. Cleopatra's tomb has not been found. It could be underwater, as maybe her palace too in Alexandria. The palace could have been on a small island just off the coast, but eventually it sank because of an 8-magnitude earthquake near Crete in Greece. In Alexandria nowadays there's an area called Cleopatra, but in the Arabic way, Cleopatra. Interestingly, apart from some names, there's absolutely nothing left in Alexandria from any of those ancient kings. Not even the so-called Cleopatra's Needles, and we'll get to them later. Ancient writer Plutarch says that Octavian completed Cleopatra's unfinished tomb and buried her together with Mark Antony. Over the past years, archaeologists have also been looking for the tomb at a city called Taposiris Magna, a few kilometers from Alexandria. Taposiris comes from the Greek word for grave, taphos, which becomes a P in this case, so taphos becomes tapos, and it means grave of Osiris. Taphos Osiris, Osiris. From the Greek word thymvos, we get the word tomb, by the way. To this day, no tomb of any of the Greek kings of Egypt has been found, which is really unbelievable that all those Greek kings who practically occupied ancient Egypt are nowhere to be found. To honor his victory, Octavian would found the city of Nicopolis near Actium. The ruins of the city of Victory, which is the name, the meaning of the name, you can see even now, and there's also a very nice museum there. Later on, Agrippa ordered an impressive temple to be built in Rome called Pantheon. The name comes from the Greek words pan and theos. Again, just to be sure, Agrippa was the general of Octavian. The one that we see today, though, the Pantheon that we see today, though, was rebuilt in the 2nd century AD, but preserving the original inscription with the name Agrippa on it. This Pantheon was designed by an architect named Apollodoros. In Greek, it means gift of Apollo. Doro. That's what we say Pandora as well. Or Dorothy. Gift of the god. He was born in Damascus. That was part of the Roman Empire at that moment, but he was either Greek or Nabatean. Remember Petra and Jordan, that's the Nabateans. Probably thanks to this incredible architect, the dome became more common. This amazing combination of Greek, Eastern, and Roman elements that he represents is one of the things that made Roman architecture possible. Agrippa even had the audacity to replace a Greek statue in front of the Acropolis in Athens to put his own, but we don't have this anymore. The War of Octavian with Cleopatra and Mark Antony was the last war of the Roman Republic. But what if things had gone differently back in September 2nd, 31 BC? Had Cleopatra and Antony defeated Octavian at Actium, he might have been executed. The Roman Empire, as we finally knew it, wouldn't have existed. Having a Greek ruler that combined Egyptian elements as well as a Roman ruler would have certainly taken that empire towards a very different direction. Plus, Cleopatra and Julius Caesar's son would have eventually taken the throne. So we would really have a Greek-Roman king. Keep in mind that no matter what, the factor that changes the equation is Cleopatra. If it wasn't for her, maybe Caesar wouldn't have been assassinated. Even if it wasn't for her, Octavian maybe wouldn't have fought Mark Antony, so maybe he wouldn't have died either. This woman caused a lot of people's deaths. We'll definitely get to those what-ifs in a very different episode, so stay tuned for that. In reality, Octavian emerged as the sole ruler of Rome, transitioning the Republic into the Roman Empire in 27 BC. So there is no talk of a Roman Empire until 27 BC. He took the title of Augustus. That's why the month August was named after him. And he ruled a total of 41 years. A man who's selling fake jewelry is just passing by, of course, and he has a speaker with Egyptian music. So this is how the rude Romans, as Horace put it, practically put an end to Greece and Egypt's independence, the two greatest civilizations of that part of the planet. The last laugh was definitely on the Romans. After the Battle of Actium, though, Egypt didn't just bow to Roman rule. It waltzed into Rome's cultural scene, leaving a glamorous crocodile-shaped mark. And here's how. Cleopatra's gods went global. The Egyptian goddess Isis became a superstar across the Roman Empire. Her temples popped up from Pompeii to Britain, blending Egyptian mysticism with Greco-Roman tradition. And let's not forget Horus, Anubis, and the rest of the Egyptian deity entourage who all joined the Greco-Roman religious circuit. As I've mentioned, we even have a shrine of Egyptian gods near Athens at Marathon, where the famous battle against the Persians happened. So if you visit Athens, you have the chance to see all that in Marathon Museum, and also visit the Marathon Run Museum, because of course, the race that we do nowadays got its name from that place. Crocodiles, captives, and palm trees. Roman coins began sporting bold Egyptian themes. A coin proclaimed Egypt Capta, Egypt captured, with a crocodile as the star of the show, symbolizing Rome's domination over Egypt. At Nemausus, modern Nîmes, a bronze coin featured a crocodile chained to a palm tree under a laurel wreath. Egypt conquered and brought to heel. These coins were Roman propaganda at its finest, flaunting Augustus' victory. Nîmes, also known as the French Rome, really loved this design. So its modern emblem still features a crocodile and a palm tree. It reads Col Nem, Colonia Nemausus, just like the ancient coin. Obelisks and exotic bling. Rome became an open-air museum for Egyptian art. As we mentioned, Augustus brought obelisks from Egypt to decorate Rome, including one for the Circus Maximus. These huge symbols of Egypt's ancient glory now proclaimed Roman power. I also mentioned earlier the so-called Cleopatra's Needles. These are two obelisks dating from the 15th century BC, 3,500 years old, that were eventually removed in the late 1800s. One of them ended up in London at the Victoria Embankment, and the other one in Central Park in New York. So, such random places where these obelisks clearly don't belong. Another obelisk that was in Alexandria but was moved in antiquity is the one that millions of people see now in the Vatican Square. Italy, by the way, has 10 obelisks. Sometimes obelisks were given by the Turks, also who occupied Egypt in the 1800s. So when the French got the ancient obelisk that you see now in Paris, they gave to Egypt a clock that hardly ever worked. You gotta love these Western Europeans. Obelisk, by the way, is another word entirely associated with Egypt that is actually Greek. Ovelos, where obelisk comes from, means spit. Something that we use when we make food, for example, when we roast meat. The ancient Egyptians called it techenu. Meanwhile, Egyptian motifs like lotus flowers, sphinxes, and more started appearing in Roman villas, frescoes, and temples. Romans didn't just conquer Egypt, they brought its style home. Typical. Science, mysticism, and Alexandria. The Library of Alexandria, though past its peak, continued to inspire Roman scholars. Egyptian advances in astronomy, medicine, and engineering shaped Roman learning. Hermeticism. Okay, this is my amazing Arabic. I just said yes, and the guy broke a cup. I just got a second coffee. That's what's happening. Hermeticism originated from the synthesis of Egyptian and Greek ideas during the Hellenistic period, especially after Alexander the Great's conquest of Egypt in 332 BC. To be honest, by the way, I think this is kind of surreal. I usually do this in my room in Athens in absolute quiet, so I never do this during the day because I don't want any sounds to be heard, like even a motorcycle, for example. And right now there's so many sounds from everything. It revolved around Hermes, Trismegistos, meaning thrice great Hermes. He's a fusion of the Egyptian god Thoth, god of wisdom, writing, and magic, and the Greek god Hermes, the messenger and guide of souls. Hermeticism, by the way, later influenced Christianity, Islamic philosophy, and Renaissance thought. In short, Egypt became Rome's cool factor. Cleopatra's death marked the end of the Ptolemaic dynasty in Greek rule. It also marked Egypt's absorption into the Roman Empire, which had just begun with a battle in Greece. But little did the Greeks and Romans know, the city and all of Egypt would be taken over for good by the Arabs in the 7th century. Who knows what would have happened if Egypt hadn't been taken over then? Another what if. And we're not done. This is to be continued in the next episode, so stay tuned. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share. Until next time, this is Ponoufiros Dovletis signing off from Not Another Greek History Podcast.